My fiancé said, "If you really loved me, you'd let me see my ex sometimes." 2 days later, he rang our doorbell. With flowers. I don't think I'll ever forget the way she said it. Clara sat across from me at our kitchen table, stirring her coffee like she was trying to hypnotize herself, not even looking me in the eyes when the words fell out of her mouth. "If you really loved me, you'd let me see my ex sometimes." She said it like she was asking me to pass the salt. No hesitation. No testing the waters. Just a statement, plain and simple. For a second, I thought she was joking. We had been engaged for 6 months, planning a wedding that had already cost me more than I'd admit to my closest friends, and she suddenly decided to play this kind of game? But when I asked her what she meant, she looked up, completely calm, and doubled down. She said she didn't believe in cutting people off, that her ex, Simon, had been in her life too long to just disappear, and that if I really cared about her, I'd understand. I didn't shout. I didn't break anything. I just sat there and watched her, and for the first time in our 3 years together, I realized I was looking at a stranger. "Try me," I told her. That was all I said. 2 nights later, he rang our doorbell. The knock came around 7, just as I was chopping vegetables for dinner. Clara was upstairs getting ready to run errands. I wasn't expecting anyone, but the second I opened the door, I understood exactly who it was. Simon. I'd seen his face before, once or twice on Clara's phone when she was scrolling too quickly to hide it. Now he was standing on my porch in a wrinkled blazer, holding a cheap bouquet of gas station flowers, smirking like this was some sort of sitcom. "Adrian, right?" he said, sticking out his hand like we were old friends. "I'm Simon." I didn't shake his hand. Behind me, I heard Clara's voice at the top of the stairs. She froze mid-step, eyes widening when she saw him at the door. Then, and this is what burned me the most, she smiled. Not a guilty smile, not nervous laughter, but an honest-to-God smile. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. Simon waltzed in without being invited, brushing past me with his flowers. "Thought I'd stop by. Clara said you two were cool about me visiting sometimes." Cool. That was the word he used. Like I was supposed to clap him on the back and pour him a beer. Clara took the flowers, still smiling, though her hands shook slightly. "Thanks, Simon. That's sweet." I closed the door behind them, set the knife down on the counter, and leaned against it, watching the two of them. "You know," I said quietly, "I paid for that dress you're wearing, and the car you drive, and the school you just finished, and you thought it made sense to invite him into my house." Clara's face finally lost its smile. "Adrian, don't do this." "No, I will do this." I cut her off. "You wanted honesty? You got it. You want him in your life? Fine. But then everything I gave you, every dollar, every ounce of security, that disappears tonight. Because if you really loved me, you wouldn't be standing here holding his flowers." The silence that followed was heavy. Simon shifted on his feet, clearly not expecting me to react this way. "Look, man, don't take it personal," he said, suddenly awkward. "She just needs closure, you know? Old feelings and all that." I laughed. The kind of laugh that has no humor in it, the kind that makes people nervous. "Closure? Is that what you're selling, Simon? Because last I checked, closure doesn't come with weekly visits and bouquets." Clara finally snapped. "Stop it. You're being dramatic. This doesn't have to be a big deal." But it was a big deal. It was the biggest deal of my life. I didn't throw him out. Not yet. I let him sit awkwardly on the couch while Clara fluttered around, trying to make small talk, pretending the tension wasn't suffocating. I wanted him to feel the weight of being in my space, surrounded by everything I built, everything I paid for, while he sat there like a parasite. After 10 minutes, Simon made an excuse about having to go. Clara walked him to the door like a lovesick teenager. I stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, letting her dig her own grave. The second the door closed, I spoke. "You can keep seeing him if you want, but you'll do it without me, and without a dime of my money." Clara's eyes went wide. "You don't mean that." I smiled coldly. "Watch me." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying everything I'd done for her. When we met, Clara was drowning in debt. Student loans, credit cards, medical bills from her mother's surgery. She worked part-time at a cafe, barely scraping by. I stepped in, piece by piece, because I believed in her. I paid off her tuition so she could finish grad school. I covered the down payment on the apartment. I paid her mom's hospital bills. I even put her sister through a summer program she couldn't afford. All because I thought I was building a future with her. Now I realized I'd just been building a palace for someone else to enjoy. The next morning, I started pulling strings. First, the bank. I canceled the joint credit card Clara loved to swipe around town. I locked my accounts, rerouted my paychecks, and set up alerts on every line of credit with my name attached. Second, the lease. The apartment was under both our names, but the down payment? That was mine. I called the landlord and informed him I'd be moving out within 30 days. Clara would be fully responsible for rent. Third, the car. It was registered under me. I drove it to my brother's house and left it there. Clara would wake up to an empty parking spot. Each move was quiet, deliberate, like sliding chess pieces into place. Clara didn't notice right away. She was too busy texting Simon, too distracted by the thrill of sneaking around. But I knew, and that knowledge was the only thing keeping me calm. 2 days later, she confronted me. "Why is the card declined?" she demanded, storming into the living room. "Because it's my card," I replied, not even looking up from my laptop. "And I decided you don't get to spend my money on him." Her face flushed. "This isn't fair. You can't just pull everything away." "Fair." I finally looked at her, letting the word hang in the air. "Fair is me paying for your life while you bring your ex into my home? No, Clara. This is justice." She opened her mouth, closed it again, and stormed off, slamming the bedroom door. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That evening, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey man, it's Simon. Maybe we should talk. Clara's upset. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stared at the message for a long time, then laughed to myself. The arrogance. The sheer audacity. He thought he could reason with me. He thought I'd just hand over the keys to the life I built. No, he was about to learn the hard way. Because this wasn't about love anymore. This was about revenge. And I was just getting started. The morning after I canceled her cards and took the car, Clara tried to act normal. She came down in one of her designer outfits, bought with my money, of course, and brewed her coffee like nothing had happened. But the tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. She didn't thank me for the breakfast I made. Didn't even look at me. Instead, she sat down, scrolled on her phone, and said casually, "Simon asked me to come to lunch later. I told him I'd be there." Just like that. No hesitation. No apology. As if I was supposed to nod my head like some obedient dog and wish her well. I set down my fork and said, "Then you'll walk there. Because the car's gone." Her face snapped up. "What do you mean gone?" "I mean it was never yours," I said calmly. "It's in my name. It's parked somewhere else now. You want to see Simon? Call him to pick you up. Let him pay for the gas." The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd heard in months. She pushed her chair back and stormed out, muttering curses under her breath. And just like that, the line had been drawn. She thought I was bluffing, that I'd eventually cave, but she had no idea just how much of her life I controlled. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Clara's sister, Ivy. "You're destroying her." Ivy snapped the second I answered. She called me crying. She said, "You're pulling the rug out from under her. After everything she did for you, this is how you repay her." I almost laughed at that one. Everything she did for me. Remind me what that is, Ivy. Because last I checked, it was me paying your summer program fees so you could spend a month in Italy. Or did Clara forget to mention that part? There was silence on the other end. Then Ivy hissed, "You'll regret this." I hung up. By the weekend, Clara had officially moved from cold to desperate. She tried playing nice, cooking dinner, dressing up, pretending things were normal. But I wasn't interested in her play acting. Every time she smiled at me, I saw Simon's cheap bouquet in her hands. On Sunday night, she snapped again. "This isn't sustainable, Adrian," she said, slamming her wine glass down. "You can't just cut me off. We're engaged." "No," I corrected her. "We were engaged. Now you're a tenant who hasn't paid rent." The color drained from her face. I slid a sheet of paper across the table. It was a copy of the lease agreement. "Starting next month, this is yours. Rent, utilities, everything. Consider it practice for when Simon can't pay for your lattes." Her hands shook as she read it. "You're really doing this to me?" "You did this to yourself," I replied. The next twist came faster than I expected. On Tuesday, Simon showed up again. This time, I caught him leaning against his car outside the building, waiting for Clara to come down. When I pulled into the lot, he straightened up, flashed that smug grin, and strolled toward me like we were old friends. "Hey man," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "I just wanted to say thanks for being so chill about all this. Not every guy would be." I stared at his hand until he pulled it back. "You've got guts, Simon. I'll give you that." He laughed, oblivious. "Look, I get it. Clara's hard to let go of. But don't worry. I'll take good care of her." That was when I realized he truly believed he was winning. He thought Clara was stepping up in life by leaving me for him. He had no idea she was living in a house of cards I built with my own money. So I let him talk. I let him gloat. And while he bragged about taking her to lunch spots downtown, I filed away every word, every weakness. 2 days later, at a friend's birthday party, the humiliation hit me head on. Clara showed up with Simon. Not beside him, with him, holding his hand like they were a couple. She hadn't even bothered to text me. The whole room went silent when they walked in. I watched people glance at me, whispering pity in their eyes. Simon looked around, grinning, enjoying the show. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't yell. Instead, I ordered a drink, stayed for half an hour, then left without saying goodbye. That night, clips surfaced online, Clara dancing with Simon, Clara kissing him on the cheek, Clara laughing while Simon spun her around. My phone buzzed with messages from friends asking if I was okay, if the wedding was still on. The humiliation was public now, and that was exactly what I needed. The next morning, I called Clara's boss. Her company had strict rules about professionalism, and I knew she'd been skipping hours to sneak around. I sent them one of the videos of her dancing with Simon, time-stamped right in the middle of her shift. By noon, Clara came home red-eyed, mascara smeared, clutching a cardboard box with her desk belongings. "You got me fired," she screamed, hurling the box across the room. Papers flew everywhere. "No," I said coolly. "You got yourself fired. I just gave them what they needed." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. For the first time, Simon wasn't around to pick up the pieces. That evening, Simon came by again, pounding on the door until I opened it. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he snapped. "Clara's a wreck. You think you're a man for tearing her down like this?" I smiled. "I think I'm a man for reclaiming what's mine. Everything she had came from me. I'm just taking it back." Simon's jaw tightened. "You're pathetic." I leaned in close. "And you're broke. Tell me, Simon, how are those old gambling debts treating you? Because I hear the wrong people know you're back in town." For the first time, his smug mask cracked. Just for a moment. Then he turned on his heel and stormed off. By the weekend, the dominoes were falling faster than I could have planned. Clara's friends stopped answering her calls. Her mother, Diane, left me a voicemail screaming about how I was ruining her daughter's life. Her sister Ivy sent a barrage of texts calling me cruel, vindictive, heartless. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I spent the weekend at my brother's place, away from the chaos, quietly enjoying the unraveling. Because here was the truth, Clara didn't just cheat on me. She insulted me. She spit in the face of every sacrifice I made for her. And now she was paying the price, in full. On Sunday night, I returned to the apartment to find Clara gone. No note, no explanation. Just her closet half empty and her side of the bed stripped bare. I didn't panic. I didn't call. I knew exactly where she was. Simon's car was parked outside a cheap motel downtown. I didn't need to follow her inside. I didn't need to take pictures. I just stood there for a moment, watching the neon sign flicker, before turning and walking away. Because that was the beauty of it. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. Everyone already knew. The videos were still circulating online. Her reputation at work was gone. Her financial safety net was gone. All that was left was the final act. And I was going to make sure it hurt. Clara came back 3 days later. She didn't knock, didn't text. I woke up to the sound of the front door opening at 2 a.m., her heels clacking against the hardwood like she owned the place. She dropped her purse on the counter and slumped into the living room without a word. The smell hit me before I even turned on the light. Cheap perfume, cigarettes, and liquor. She looked terrible. Mascara smudged, hair in knots, blouse wrinkled like she'd been sleeping in it. She flopped onto the couch, scrolling her phone, pretending nothing was wrong. "Rough night," I asked from the doorway. She didn't look up. "Don't start." I leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "So this is what it looks like, huh? Trading steak dinners for motel sheets." Her thumb froze mid-scroll. She finally looked at me, eyes burning with a mix of anger and shame. "You're loving this, aren't you? Watching me fall apart." "Loving it," I said evenly. "No." "Savoring it?" "Absolutely." The next morning, she was gone again. This time, she left a sticky note on the counter. "Don't touch my stuff. I'll be back for it." I crumpled it without a second thought. Her closet was still half full of clothes I'd bought, racks of dresses, heels, handbags she used to flaunt at every party. The engagement ring sat on the bathroom counter, left behind in her rush. It was still technically mine. The financing was under my name. I boxed everything up. Dresses, heels, handbags, jewelry. The ring. By the end of the afternoon, her side of the closet was bare. I drove it all to a storage unit I'd rented the week before and locked it down in my name. If she wanted her little trophies, she'd pay for them. 2 days later, Clara showed up again. This time she wasn't alone. Simon walked in right behind her, uninvited, grinning like he'd just won a lottery ticket. "Nice place," he said, glancing around. "Shame about the atmosphere, though." Clara shot me a defiant look. "I'm here for my things." I gestured toward the empty closet. "Already handled." Her mouth dropped open. "You can't just take my stuff?" "Correction," I said. "I can. I did. And I will again, if you keep showing up here with him." Simon stepped forward, puffing his chest out. "Man, you've got issues. Let her go. She doesn't want you." I met his gaze without blinking. "Then why is she still sleeping on my couch every other night?" That one hit. His smirk faltered. Clara shoved him toward the door before he could respond. "This isn't over," she spat at me. She was right. It wasn't. By the weekend, the whispers started. Mutual friends called me, half out of pity, half out of curiosity. They'd seen Clara at bars with Simon, drunk out of her mind, sometimes crying in the bathroom, sometimes clinging to him like he was her lifeline. One friend, Dylan, who'd been at the birthday party, told me quietly, "It's bad, man. She's burning bridges left and right. People are starting to talk. She's not the same person." "Good," I said flatly, because this wasn't about salvaging her. This was about making sure she couldn't crawl back into the life I gave her. A week later, Simon's cracks started to show. Clara showed up again, but this time she wasn't angry. She was panicked. She sat on the couch clutching her phone, whispering frantically. "What's wrong now?" I asked, not bothering to hide the sarcasm. She shot me a glare. "Simon owes people money. Real money. They've been calling me because they can't reach him. They know about me." I almost laughed. "So the big man with the flowers has a price on his head?" Not surprised. She buried her face in her hands. "You don't understand. They're serious. They came to his apartment last night. They know where I work." She stopped, realizing too late. I raised an eyebrow. "Where you used to work, you mean? Unless you forgot you're unemployed." Her face twisted. "You're enjoying this too much." "You're damn right I am," I said. The financial squeeze hit her next. When I stopped paying her tuition loan, the notices started arriving. Late fees, calls from lenders, red stamps across envelopes she left unopened on the counter. She tried to hide them at first, stuffing them under cushions, but I found them easily enough. One night, I laid them all out on the kitchen table in neat rows. When she walked in and saw them, her face drained of color. "Remember when I said everything I gave you disappears?" I asked. "This is just the start." She snatched them up, tore them in half, and stormed off. But she couldn't tear the reality. Debt doesn't vanish with temper tantrums. Simon, of course, was nowhere to be found when it mattered. He still showed up with that fake confidence, but I saw the cracks. His car broke down, and suddenly he was borrowing Clara's rides. His gifts were cheaper each time, little trinkets instead of jewelry. He had no job worth mentioning, no savings, no backup plan. One night, Clara cornered me in the hallway. "You don't get it, Adrian," she said, voice trembling. "I can't just leave him. He needs me." I stared at her. "Needs you? He's draining you. And when he's finished, he'll drop you like trash. Just like you did to me." Tears welled in her eyes. For a second, I almost saw the woman I thought I loved. But then she whispered, "You'll regret this," and stormed off again. Empty threats from an empty shell. The breaking point came at Simon's birthday party. A mutual acquaintance invited me, probably to stir drama. I wasn't planning to go, but something in me snapped. I wanted to see just how far she'd fallen. The party was at a bar downtown. When I walked in, I spotted them instantly, Clara and Simon, front and center, arms wrapped around each other. She was holding his hand, laughing too loudly, pretending she was happy. But then I saw it. Her engagement ring finger was bare. She wasn't pretending to be engaged anymore. She was pretending to belong to him. I stayed just long enough to watch her lean in and kiss his cheek while people around them clapped. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to smile. Because this was exactly what I needed. I left without saying a word. The fallout was immediate. By the next morning, photos from the party were all over social media. Clara and Simon, arms around each other, lips nearly touching. Comments flooded in, speculation, gossip, ridicule. People tagging me, asking if the wedding was still happening, if I was okay. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I made another call, this time to the jeweler. The ring had never been fully paid off. It was in my name, financed monthly. I canceled the payments, reclaimed the asset. By noon, the jeweler had repossessed it. Clara came home that evening screaming, "You took my ring." "My ring," I corrected. "And it's gone. Just like everything else." She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, clutching her empty hand like she could will the diamond back. I didn't flinch. From that day forward, the spiral accelerated. Clara couldn't get another job. Word had spread about her being unreliable, about her public scenes. Simon's debts caught up with him. Men in dark jackets started lingering near his apartment, waiting. And through it all, I remained calm, steady, untouchable, because I knew the end was coming. One evening, as I sat in the apartment enjoying a glass of whiskey, Clara walked in one last time. She looked broken, hollowed out. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Help me. Just one more chance. We can fix this. We can." I shook my head slowly. "No, Clara. You made your choice. Now you live with it." She dropped to her knees, sobbing, begging. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not anger, not defiance, but fear. And that was when I knew it was time for the final act. Because revenge wasn't complete until everyone saw what she really was. Until her family, her friends, her lover, all of them, faced the truth at once. So I planned the dinner. The night of the dinner arrived like the calm before a storm. I'd rented a private room in one of the nicer restaurants in town, the kind Clara used to love showing off to her friends. It wasn't cheap, but it was worth every penny. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I wanted the setting to contrast perfectly with what was about to unfold. I told Clara's family it was a rehearsal dinner, a chance to talk through details since the wedding was only weeks away. I didn't mention Clara or Simon by name when I sent the invitations. I wanted them to come curious, unaware. By 7 o'clock, the room was full. Clara's mother Diane sat at the head of the table, sipping wine nervously, Ivy scrolling on her phone, half bored. Friends, co-workers, a few cousins, all dressed for celebration. Then Clara walked in, and behind her, like a shadow, came Simon. The air shifted immediately. Conversation stalled. Forks clinked against plates. Some guests glanced at me, waiting for my reaction. I stayed seated, calm, as if I'd expected this all along. Clara wore a smile too wide, too practiced. She leaned into Simon, fingers laced with his, daring me to say something. I stood, raised my glass, and tapped it lightly. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," I said. "Tonight isn't about rehearsal. It's about truth, and I think it's time everyone here heard it." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, receipts, statements I'd spent weeks compiling. I laid them on the table one by one like cards in a game. 3 years ago, Clara had nothing, I began. Debt from school, medical bills for her mom, credit cards she couldn't pay, and I, foolishly, thought love meant carrying her burden. So I paid. Tuition, rent, hospital fees, even Ivy's summer abroad. I looked up at Ivy, who suddenly found her phone screen fascinating. I didn't ask for anything back. I thought we were building a life together. But instead, Clara decided she wanted to build one with Simon. Gasps rippled through the room. Diane's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Clara's face burned crimson. "Adrian, stop this right now." "No," I said, voice firm. "Not this time. You invited your ex into my home. You flaunted him in public. And when I pulled away, you drained our savings. These," I tapped the statements, "are transfers you made to cover dinners, trips, and his debts. Thousands of dollars. All stolen from me." Simon shifted uncomfortably. His smug mask wavered. One of Clara's uncles muttered, "My God." But I wasn't finished. "See, Simon here isn't just a guest. He's a parasite. He owes money. A lot of it. Gambling, failed business ventures, take your pick." And Clara, in her brilliance, decided to bankroll him. With my money. I pulled out my phone, hit play, and set it on the table. Simon's voice filled the room, recorded outside my apartment weeks earlier. "Don't worry, Clara. He'll cave. He's too soft to cut you off. Soon enough, it'll all be ours." The silence after that recording was deafening. Clara's smile collapsed into panic. Simon shot her a furious look, realizing she'd been careless. I let the moment stretch before delivering the final blow. "Now, I know what you're all thinking. Poor Clara, caught between two men. But here's the truth. She never lost me. She threw me away. And for what? For him." I gestured at Simon, who now looked pale under the chandelier light. Because right on cue, two men stepped into the room. They weren't dressed for dinner. They weren't guests. They were Simon's creditors. He froze in his chair, eyes wide. One of them clapped him on the back hard enough to rattle the cutlery. "Evening, Simon. We've been looking for you." Gasps turned into murmurs, the room erupting with whispers. Ivy covered her mouth. Diane clutched her pearls like she was in a soap opera. Simon stammered, "This isn't the place." "On the contrary," I said coldly. "This is exactly the place." Clara stood abruptly, face twisted in rage. "You set this up? You're trying to ruin me." I tilted my head. "No, Clara. You ruined yourself the moment you decided my love was conditional on letting your ex sleepwalk back into your life." Her family turned on her in unison. Diane hissed, "Tell me it isn't true." Ivy whispered something sharp that I couldn't catch, but the look on her face said it all. Simon tried to stand, but the men tightened their grip on his shoulders. He wasn't going anywhere. I gathered my folder, slid it back into my jacket, and looked around the table one last time. The wedding is off. The accounts are frozen. The ring is gone. The car, the apartment, the tuition payments, all gone. You wanted Simon? You got him. And everything that comes with him. Clara's legs buckled. She collapsed back into her chair, hands shaking. Simon's creditors hauled him to his feet. "We'll be in touch," one of them muttered darkly. They dragged him out the door, leaving Clara sitting alone, humiliated, exposed in front of everyone she'd ever wanted to impress. I didn't stay for dessert. I left the room in silence, the whispers swelling behind me as I walked down the hall. I didn't look back. Outside, the night air was crisp, almost cleansing. For the first time in months, I felt free. The fallout came fast. Clara tried calling me, dozens of times. I didn't answer. She left voicemails alternating between sobbing apologies and venomous threats. Word spread quickly. Friends who'd once envied her engagement now avoided her. Her family, humiliated, cut her off financially. Simon vanished into whatever hole his debts forced him into. Last I heard, he'd fled town, leaving her behind. Clara ended up couch surfing with acquaintances until they, too, got tired of her drama. Eventually, she moved back into her mother's cramped house. The woman who once boasted about marrying into stability was now back, where she started, broke, disgraced, forgotten. As for me, I didn't gloat. I didn't post about it online. I didn't need to. The truth had already burned itself into everyone's memory. I simply walked away. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it. If I regret the money I spent, the years I lost. And maybe I should. But the truth is, watching Clara sit there at that dinner table, stripped of her lies, abandoned by the man she thought would save her, staring down the consequences of her choices, that was worth every cent. Because love doesn't mean letting someone destroy you. Sometimes love means knowing exactly when to stop giving and start taking everything back.